Section 210.52G requires at least one receptacle outlet to be installed in every dwelling unit's garage, carport, and similar locations where vehicles are parked inside. A detached garage is not explicitly defined as a dwelling unit in the NEC. However, it may be considered an accessory structure to the dwelling units it serves. The inspector's interpretation that 210.52G applies to a detached garage next to an apartment or condo is reasonable based on the following. A detached garage serves a similar purpose to a garage within a dwelling unit as it is used for parking vehicles. Detached garages are often considered accessory structures to the dwelling units they support. Having a receptacle outlet in a detached garage provides convenience for occupants and supports safety by facilitating tasks such as battery charging and power tool use. Based on the NEC definition of similar location and the common practice of treating detached garages as accessory structures, it is reasonable to interpret that 210.52G applies to detached garages next to apartments or condos. Therefore, installing at least one receptacle outlet in such garages is required. The specific wording of Section 210.52G mentions dwelling unit garages, carports, and similar locations. The key question is whether a detached garage serving multiple dwelling units, such as in an apartment complex or condominium, falls under the umbrella of similar locations. To understand this better, let's break down the components of this code section. Firstly, the primary intent of 210.52G is to provide a convenient and safe location for occupants to plug in electrical equipment in areas where vehicles are parked. This could include battery chargers, power tools, or even vacuum cleaners for car maintenance. Secondly, the code specifically mentions dwelling unit garages, which implies a direct connection to a single-family home or individual dwelling unit within a larger structure. Thirdly, the phrase similar locations allows for interpretation based on the function and use of the space. When we consider a detached garage serving multiple dwelling units, it is clear that it serves a similar function to an attached garage in a single-family home. Residents use it to park their vehicles and may need access to electrical power for various tasks. Although the garage is detached, its purpose remains consistent with the intent of 210.52G. Now, let's examine the concept of accessory structures. In many jurisdictions, detached garages are considered accessory structures to the primary dwelling units they serve. This means they are functionally related to the dwelling units and provide a service or amenity to the residents. Given this classification, it is reasonable to argue that the electrical requirements for dwelling unit garages should also apply to detached garages serving the same purpose. To further support this interpretation, consider the practical implications of not requiring a receptacle in a detached garage. Residents would be forced to run extension cords from their apartments or condos to the garage, which can create safety hazards and inconvenience. Additionally, it could discourage residents from performing necessary vehicle maintenance, leading to potential safety issues. By requiring a receptacle, the code ensures that residents have access to a safe and convenient power source for their vehicles and related tasks. It is also important to note that local electrical inspectors often have the final say in code interpretations. Their decisions are based on their understanding of the code, local amendments, and the specific circumstances of the installation. In this case, the inspector's decision to require a receptacle in the detached garage is a reasonable interpretation of 210.52G, given the function and use of the space. To provide further clarity, let's consider some hypothetical scenarios. Scenario 1 involves a single-family home with a detached garage. In this case, there is no question that 210.52G applies, and a receptacle is required in the garage. Scenario 2 involves an apartment complex with individual garages attached to each unit. Again, 210.52G clearly applies, and each garage must have a receptacle. Scenario 3 involves an apartment complex with a detached garage structure serving all residents. This is the scenario in question, and the inspector's interpretation is that 210.52G should apply given the similar function and use of the space. To summarize, while a detached garage is not explicitly defined as a dwelling unit, its function as a parking and maintenance area for vehicles aligns with the intent of 210.52G. Additionally, the classification of detached garages as accessory structures supports the argument that the electrical requirements for dwelling unit garages should also apply to detached garages serving multiple dwelling units. Therefore, it is reasonable to interpret that 210.52G applies to detached garages next to apartments or condos, and installing at least one receptacle outlet in such garages is required. Always consult with your local electrical inspector and refer to the most recent edition of the NEC for specific requirements in your area. Now, let's delve into some additional considerations and potential challenges in applying Section 210.52G to detached garages serving multiple dwelling units. One challenge is determining the appropriate number and location of receptacles in a detached garage. While 210.52G mandates at least one receptacle, it does not specify a maximum number or precise location. In a small, single-car detached garage, one receptacle may be sufficient. However, in a larger detached garage serving multiple vehicles, additional receptacles may be necessary to provide adequate coverage and convenience for all residents. The location of the receptacles should also be carefully considered. They should be readily accessible and located in areas where residents are likely to use them, such as near parking spaces or workbenches. Another challenge is addressing the issue of shared receptacles. In a detached garage with multiple parking spaces, it may be tempting to install a single receptacle and allow residents to share it. However, this can lead to conflicts and safety hazards, as residents may be tempted to overload the receptacle or run extension cords across parking spaces. To avoid these issues, it is generally recommended to provide each parking space with its own dedicated receptacle. This ensures that each resident has access to a safe and reliable power source without interfering with other residents. Another important consideration is the type of receptacle to use. In most residential applications, a standard 15-amp, 125-volt receptacle is sufficient for general-purpose use. However, in some cases, a 20-amp receptacle may be necessary to accommodate higher power equipment such as battery chargers or power tools. It is also important to ensure that the receptacles are properly grounded and protected by ground fault circuit interrupters, or GFCIs, to prevent electrical shocks. In addition to the receptacle requirements, it is also important to consider the wiring and overcurrent protection for the detached garage. The wiring must be sized appropriately to handle the anticipated load, and the circuit must be protected by a circuit breaker or fuse. The size of the wiring and overcurrent protection will depend on the number and type of receptacles installed, as well as any other electrical equipment in the garage, such as lighting or heating. It is also important to ensure that the wiring is installed in accordance with the NEC and local codes. This includes using the correct type of wiring, properly securing the wiring, and protecting the wiring from physical damage. Finally, it is important to consider the aesthetic impact of the electrical installation. The receptacles and wiring should be installed in a neat and professional manner, and they should be concealed as much as possible to minimize their visual impact. This can be achieved by running the wiring through conduit or concealing it behind walls or ceilings. In conclusion, applying Section 210.52G to detached garages serving multiple dwelling units can be challenging, but it is essential to ensure the safety and convenience of residents. By carefully considering the number and location of receptacles, the type of receptacles, the wiring and overcurrent protection, and the aesthetic impact of the installation, it is possible to create a safe and functional electrical system that meets the needs of all residents. Always consult with a qualified electrician and your local electrical inspector to ensure that your installation complies with all applicable codes and regulations. Remember that local amendments to the NEC can vary, so it is crucial to stay informed about the specific requirements in your area. This includes understanding any local interpretations or exceptions to the code that may apply to detached garages. To provide additional context, let's explore some common misconceptions about receptacle requirements in detached garages. One common misconception is that receptacles are only required in garages used for parking vehicles. However, 210.52G also applies to carports and similar locations where vehicles are parked inside. This means that even if a garage is primarily used for storage or other purposes, a receptacle is still required if vehicles are parked there. Another misconception is that the receptacle must be located on an interior wall of the garage. While this is often the most convenient location, the code does not specify the exact location of the receptacle. As long as the receptacle is readily accessible and located in an area where residents are likely to use it, it can be installed on an exterior wall or even on the ceiling. Another misconception is that the receptacle must be dedicated to vehicle-related tasks. While this is often the primary use of the receptacle, it can also be used for other purposes, such as powering tools or lighting. As long as the receptacle is properly sized and protected, it can be used for any general-purpose electrical need. To further clarify the requirements of 210.52G, let's examine some specific examples of acceptable and unacceptable installations. An acceptable installation would be a detached garage with one receptacle located on an interior wall near the parking space. The receptacle is a standard 15-amp, 125-volt receptacle, and it is protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI. The wiring is properly sized and protected by a circuit breaker, and the installation is neat and professional. An unacceptable installation would be a detached garage with no receptacle. This is a clear violation of 210.52G. Another unacceptable installation would be a detached garage with a single receptacle located at the far end of the garage, away from the parking space. This makes it difficult for residents to access the receptacle and discourages its use. Another unacceptable installation would be a detached garage with a receptacle that is not protected by a ground fault circuit interrupter, or GFCI. This creates a safety hazard and violates the NEC requirements for receptacles in damp or wet locations. To ensure compliance with 210.52G, it is important to follow these best practices. Firstly, consult with a qualified electrician and your local electrical inspector to determine the specific requirements in your area. Secondly, carefully plan the location and number of receptacles to ensure that they are readily accessible and provide adequate coverage for all residents. Thirdly, use the correct type of receptacles and wiring for the anticipated load. Fourthly, protect the receptacles with ground fault circuit interrupters, or GFCIs, to prevent electrical shocks. Fifthly, install the wiring in accordance with the NEC and local codes. Sixthly, ensure that the installation is neat and professional. By following these best practices, you can ensure that your detached garage complies with 210.52G and provides a safe and convenient electrical system for all residents. Now let's consider some potential cost implications of complying with 210.52G. The cost of installing a receptacle in a detached garage will vary depending on several factors, including the distance from the main electrical panel, the type of wiring used, and the labor costs in your area. However, in general, the cost of adding a receptacle to an existing detached garage is relatively low, typically ranging from $100 to $500. The cost of wiring a new detached garage will be higher, as it will involve running new wiring from the main electrical panel to the garage. The cost of wiring a new detached garage can range from $500 to several $1,000s, depending on the size of the garage and the complexity of the wiring. While the cost of complying with 210.52G may seem like an added expense, it is important to consider the long-term benefits of having a receptacle in your detached garage. A receptacle provides a convenient and safe power source for a variety of tasks such as battery charging, power tool use, and vehicle maintenance. Additionally, a receptacle can increase the value of your property and make it more attractive to potential buyers. In addition to the direct costs of complying with 210.52G, it is also important to consider the indirect costs of non-compliance. Non-compliance can result in fines, penalties, and legal liabilities. It can also create safety hazards and increase the risk of electrical shocks or fires. Therefore, it is always best to comply with all applicable codes and regulations to ensure the safety and well-being of residents. To further emphasize the importance of complying with 210.52G, let's consider some real-world examples of accidents that have occurred due to the lack of receptacles in detached garages. In one case, a resident was using an extension cord to power a battery charger in his detached garage. The extension cord was frayed and damaged, and it caused an electrical shock that resulted in serious injuries. In another case, a resident was using a space heater in his detached garage to keep warm during the winter. The space heater was not properly grounded, and it caused a fire that destroyed the garage and damaged the adjacent apartment building. These examples illustrate the importance of having a safe and reliable power source in your detached garage. By complying with 210.52G and installing a receptacle, you can help prevent accidents and ensure the safety of residents. In addition to the safety benefits, a receptacle in your detached garage can also provide a number of convenience benefits. A receptacle allows you to easily charge your car battery, use power tools for vehicle maintenance, and plug in lighting for better visibility. It also allows you to use a vacuum cleaner to clean your car and keep it looking its best. A receptacle can also be used to power a refrigerator or freezer, allowing you to store food and drinks in your garage. This can be especially convenient if you have a large family or if you entertain guests frequently. A receptacle can also be used to power a television or stereo, allowing you to enjoy entertainment in your garage. This can be especially useful if you use your garage as a workshop or hobby area. In conclusion, complying with 210.52G is essential for ensuring the safety and convenience of residents in apartments or condos with detached garages. By installing a receptacle in your detached garage, you can help prevent accidents, provide a convenient power source for a variety of tasks, and increase the value of your property. Always consult with a qualified electrician and your local electrical inspector to ensure that your installation complies with all applicable codes and regulations. And remember, safety should always be your top priority. Furthermore, consider the advancements in electrical technology and how they might impact the interpretation and application of 210.52G in the future. For example, the increasing popularity of electric vehicles, or EVs, may necessitate the installation of high-capacity receptacles in detached garages to accommodate EV charging equipment. As EV become more prevalent, the demand for EV charging stations in residential areas will likely increase. This may lead to changes in the NEC to address the specific requirements for EV charging in detached garages. In addition to EV, other technological advancements may also impact the interpretation of 210.52G. For example, the development of new power tools and equipment may require the use of different types of receptacles or higher voltage circuits. As technology continues to evolve, it is important to stay informed about the latest electrical codes and regulations to ensure that your installations are safe and compliant. This includes attending industry conferences, reading trade publications, and consulting with qualified electricians and electrical inspectors. Another important consideration is the impact of energy efficiency on receptacle requirements in detached garages. As energy costs continue to rise, there is a growing emphasis on energy conservation. This may lead to changes in the NEC to promote the use of energy-efficient receptacles and lighting in detached garages. For example, the code may require the use of LED lighting, which is more energy efficient than traditional incandescent or fluorescent lighting. The code may also require the use of occupancy sensors, which automatically turn off the light when the garage is not in use. In addition to energy efficiency, it is also important to consider the environmental impact of electrical installations in detached garages. This includes using environmentally friendly materials, reducing waste, and minimizing pollution. For example, the code may require the use of recyclable wiring and receptacles. The code may also require the use of low VOC paints and coatings. By considering the environmental impact of your electrical installations, you can help protect the environment and create a more sustainable future. In summary, the interpretation and application of 210.52G may evolve over time due to technological advancements, energy efficiency concerns, and environmental considerations. It is important to stay informed about these changes and to adapt your electrical installations accordingly. Always consult with a qualified electrician and your local electrical inspector to ensure that your installations are safe, compliant, and sustainable. By doing so, you can help create a better future for yourself and for generations to come. Remember that the NEC is a living document that is constantly being updated to reflect the latest technological advancements and safety concerns. It is the responsibility of every electrician and electrical contractor to stay informed about these changes and to apply them correctly in their work. Ignoring the NEC or cutting corners to save money can have serious consequences, including electrical shocks, fires, and even death. Therefore, it is always best to err on the side of caution and to follow all applicable codes and regulations. In addition to the NEC, there may also be local codes and regulations that apply to electrical installations in detached garages. These local codes may be more stringent than the NEC, and it is important to be aware of them. Your local electrical inspector can provide you with information about these local codes and regulations. Finally, remember that electrical work can be dangerous, and it should only be performed by qualified professionals. If you are not a qualified electrician, do not attempt to perform any electrical work yourself. Hire a qualified electrician to perform the work for you. By following these guidelines, you can help ensure the safety and well-being of yourself, your family, and your community. And you can help prevent electrical accidents and fires. So take the time to learn about the NEC and local codes, and always hire a qualified electrician to perform any electrical work. It's a smart and responsible thing to do. The inspector's decision, though seemingly strict, aims to enhance safety and convenience for residents, aligning with the NEC protocols. Always prioritize safety and adhere to the latest codes for all electrical installations.